Good evening. It's 7 o'clock in India. We have an eminent panel to discuss about parental alienation. There are issues that need to be understood. There are issues that we do not generally recognize. There are issues that we need to sensitize ourselves with parental alienation. We have on this panel Dr. Rakesh Kapoor, who is an eminent person in this field. He was a neurologist, a trained doctor, and now he runs an NGO called Bamboo Tree on Child Rights. So I will ask Dr. Kapoor to open the discussion with his views on the subject. Over to Dr. Kapoor.
Thank you so much, Suparno. And good evening and to all of you who are joining in from India. And hi to all the panel members. So I think let me start with really saying that there is a very unique issue today about what we call as parental alienation, which is very misunderstood and completely non-even existent in the minds of the people to basically understand that today approximately 10 million marriages are taking place across India alone. I'm going to talk only about India. And if we look at the data, approximately about 16% of them break down at some point of time. The government data says 2%, but if you look at United Nations data and other such data sources, you'll be able to come up with approximately 16% of the marriages break down. And what happens to these children is something that is going to be the topic which I would like to really discuss a lot more about. So when two parents in any kind of a post-marriage or a post-separation separate, one of the things that typically does happen to one of the parents ends up, and this is what we've seen in close to about 60 to 65% of such breakups, that what we see in the children is, by the parents is, that one parent starts buying the loyalty of the child and trying to pull the child towards oneself. Now, this may seem like a very, very small and a normal issue to a lot of us, saying, okay, a mother and a father are there and they are fighting for a slight greater amount of love for the child. But that actually is not the truth. So let me tell you how they end up doing it. Let me give you a very beautiful example, actually, which happened with a person that I know extremely well. So there was this about 5-year-old child, daughter, and the father took the child to the zoo because the child was extremely fond of animals. Now, as soon as the child went into the zoo, the child was in an absolute, she was full of anxiety. She didn't want to talk. She was extremely agitated, angry. Sometimes she started crying. And in spite of the fact that she really loved animals, in this case, the father. Now, one thing which I want to really point out in this is that typically it is seen that it is the mothers, and when I'm going to be talking about it, I'm going to maybe in this example talk about it from mother's perspective, but this is completely gender neutral. We've seen it across the world that both fathers and mothers do it equally, right? It's just a question of whoever has the greater power ends up exercising it, right? Now, as this child was extremely agitated and anxious, suddenly the father said, okay, tried to cheer her up, tried to make her more interested in the animals, but she wouldn't. So within about half an hour or 40 minutes, the father took her out of the zoo and suddenly the child is back being as happy, normal, and a bubbly child like always. The father, being extremely surprised about what had happened, suddenly asked her, what happened? She says, Mama had told me that you will take me to the jungle and feed me to the tigers. For a 5-year-old child, that zoo was like a jungle, and she, in her mind, for the rest of her life, kept thinking that her father had taken her to the jungle to kill her. Now, these are the small little things which a mother does in this case. Now, this we will call as the alienating parent. Now, what does the other person? It doesn't require something even as big as this. Even small things like, so when a person goes, when a child goes to the non-custodial parent, or the parent who does not have the rights, full rights with the child of now, and when the child comes back, and the child even says a small thing like saying, I had a good time at the other parent's house. And suddenly the look that the child gets from the mother, in this case, that, oh, so you had a great time. That itself is enough to shock the child and make the child understand that, no, there is a problem. If I express happiness over over me being happy with the other parent, this parent becomes angry. Now, let me give you something as simple as this. You know, when similarly the child goes to the school and the child, one parent does not have access to the school, what happens there? The child starts getting the feeling that, yes, my one parent is responsible for my studies, my education, my food, my clothes, and everything. All I need the other parent for is just to have money from the parent. Now, when that kind of a feeling starts settling into the child, what is it that the child starts understanding within the mind? And what does it do? Now, what the child understands is that, number one, my one parent's only worth is money. Number two, that parent is not a good parent. Now, we all understand that the child is made up of two of us, that is mother and father, and he understands it as that half of me, that is half of me which has come from the parent who is not a good parent is not good, so that means half of me is not good. That is what happens to the child in this kind of a scenario. Now, to a lot of us, it may seem like, okay, the child will get over it, right? But I think what we need to clearly understand is that it is not a very simple issue of a mother-father fight. What we have found from research of approximately close to about 270,000 children across the world is that the outcomes are worse than even sexual abuse of children. So what that means is that the psychological impact of this is worse than even if the child had been sexually abused. It's that how bad it is. Now, how does it happen? There's a simple, very simple pathway to this. The pathway is, I'm sure the others would talk a lot more about what impact it has on the child and the society, but what is the simple pathway to this? The simple pathway is that our nervous system, as a neurologist, I can tell you our nervous system consists of only two simple pathways, the sympathetic and parasympathetic. So whenever we are stressed, our sympathetic system gets activated. And the more we activate our sympathetic system, the more our life reduces, the more our body's damage starts happening. Now, this damage results in greater amount of heart disease. It results in greater amount of alcoholism and drug abuse. This results in greater amount of liver disease. This results in greater amount of bone disease. Now, what we have found is that such children lose more than 10 to 15 years of their lives. We're talking about 10 to 15 years of their lives. Now, fortunately, over the last about 15 years, we have found that there has been extreme amount of research and studies on this. Fortunately, now, World Health Organization, that is WHO, recognizes this as a serious psychological disorder. what the World Health Organization has actually done is it has a list of all the diseases that are recognized in the ICD-11, which is the International Classification of Diseases. They have included that. The other is the American Psychological Association. They have also recognized this. And this has been now stated to be a serious mental disorder in children. Now, another issue in this is that when we go down to the courts and the legal system, they have a very little understanding of this. That is something which I'm sure the advocate will and the learned counsel will definitely talk in greater detail about. But what I would like to further point about is that this is not just a issue which can be handled at a purely mother and father level. This requires both court, that is legal, and also medical intervention. So the sooner we're able to recognize this, the intervention can happen. Now, that I would believe would be the end of my opening comments on this, and I'd be happy to take questions in detail about this.
Yep, but thank you, Dr. Kapoor. I mean, as you were saying, that is just not merely a parental issue as such. There is a necessity of a holistic social intervention. That's what you were saying, if I understand it. I understood it right. Now we come to Arijit. Arijit is by profession a chartered accountant, and he runs an NGO by the name of Ayushman. Arijit, taking off from Dr. Kapoor's presentation and a brilliant painting of the entire situation that faces us, what would be your take as a practitioner, as an interventionist?
See, basically, he has more or less covered what is the basis of the parental alienation, what it is like. Now, as far as intervention is concerned, and as far as our practical experience on the field is there, I can tell you that there are a lot of unimaginable incidents that take place in which one parent tries to alienate the child from the other, and they resort to a lot of schemisms and mechanisms, including also I have seen, and I think you have also read Suparnoda in the paper, I think a few days back, when a father was released from jail after he was falsely implicated by POSCO. So they resort to all sort of level to alienate the child. Here, as Dr. Kapoor has said, not only the law, for which my friends are there who can always say what they can do, he has stated that there's a medical intervention which is needed. And we have two doctors here on the panel. Now, as the realistic in India goes, and as the present framework and structure in India is concerned, none of the courts, including the family courts, are equipped to handle the medical part of it. First, they do not have any trained child psychologists at all associated with them. They don't have any child counselors associated with them. All our child welfare committees in India are more or less defunct and only in name. The people sit there and they are just getting grants. I don't know what they do. And to them, there is a very important misconception to most of us, including these people, that a child abuse they resort to is only child trafficking or sexual abuse. So here, the concept of that alienation as a part of a mental abuse, people do not understand. And it is actually being covered by Section 75 of the Juvenile Justice Act. So when the child is getting alienated, one parent is guilty of an abuse. So we do not take cognizance of this fact. And Dr. Kapoor has also been trying to do this with NCPCR for a long time. Even we have been trying here for a long time. See, the law needs to be reformed.
One intervention, Arijit. What was the abbreviation that you came out with? Most of us may not be aware of the institution that you are referring to. So could you please come out with the function of the institution and what you were referring to?
I'm coming to the institution of the Child Welfare Committees.
Yep.
In India, in all the states, they have child welfare committees under the Women and Child Development Ministry, which is supposed to look after the welfare and the rights of the child. So initially, first of all, they are not aware that India is a signatory to the UNCRC principles, so which really states that the fundamental right of the child is to have access to both parents. See, here in the court, we are fighting for our rights, the rights of the parents. But the child has nowhere to go. So the CWC must take care of the right of the child to see that that right is not being voided in any circumstances. So I'm talking about that CWC. They're also not equipped to handle this, and they don't even understand what is parent alienation. And with this world now going, even WHO recognizing this as a disease, in India, even after repeated requests and repeated petitions being filed to the departments, they have no studies and nothing has been done to actually weigh and actually to estimate the extent of alienation problem that India is facing. And
One intervention, Arijit, here. You refer to the Child Welfare Committee. I mean,
it is a part of the Child Welfare Committee.
Just a moment. Just a moment. I have an observation here. I mean, in most of the juvenile courts in West Bengal itself, we don't even have judges. CWC in most of the districts are ill-formed. They don't even have. They don't even have the members there, and it's managed by bureaucrats of various hues.
Yes.
Now, I thought that that's a very important point at this juncture.
Yes.
So what does it mean? I mean, what does it mean? If you people are talking about the social necessity of a holistic social intervention from judiciary, and judiciary is a very important thing. A legal framework, a legal superstructure is a very important thing.
Yeah.
But the legal superstructure cannot exist by itself. It needs a mechanism to connect the entire system to the affected people. I would say the afflicted people, with Dr. Kapoor's permission.
Right. And that is the very important, there lies the very important role of the CWCs. Because if the CWCs and the child protection units in all the states are working, then people do not also need to come to the courts.
Yeah.
So I think if the CWCs can work properly, and that is the job and the responsibility of the government, then a lot of this alienation can be checked, or at least remedial measures can be affected.
So is that all from your end right now at the first district?
Yes.
Yeah, Arijit. So we will move on to Mr. Ratan. Kumar Ratan is from Delhi. He is the founder of Safe Child Foundation. And Mr. Ratan, now that Arijit has talked about the issues with CWC and the intervention mechanism, what would be your take on this?
I would like to bring the picture of the emotional development of the children in this area, because parental alienation is something which distract or prevent the child to grow with the emotional development. So we just need to put focus on this area as well, because parental alienation is something is bad for children, and it harms and it gives a long-term scar on the inner core of the children. And this is all due to their prevention in the emotional development. Now coming to this area, this section of the emotional development, why this is needed and all that. Before that, I just want to go come into this area that why the parent-child relationship is needed, right? So before we go into all these things, I just want to discuss one important aspect of the parent-child relationship, that whenever a parent beat their child after a long time, what they observe that the child running and hugging the parent, kissing the parent, and crying for long. When the children, when you see, I'm just talking about the general scenario. When you see that a child is not well, unwell, they need some emotional support. They need their parent more than anything. They need that. They need warmth and affection of their parent to heal with the situation. But in parental alienation, the children has left alone with that scar, with that abuse. I can say that parental alienation is an emotional abuse. Okay, so when you see that reactions of the children, it is clear understood that role of parent in children life is much more than anything. So children need their parents when they are in any kind of problem, any kind of trauma. Hello,
Yeah, carry on.
is this okay? Okay.
Yeah, carry on.
So now coming back to this parental alienation, it comes when the parents, as that Dr. Kapoor has spoken, that it comes when parent in dispute and there is a child who unnecessarily dragged into that part, because the child need both the parents. It is a general philosophy of a child development. Just hold a minute. So, in general question, it has been asked to the children in such scenario that whom you love most, to whom you want to spend life with full life with the parent. Such questions has been asked to the child in such scenario when their parent in dispute. So this is the first time I just want to say that when a child faces the impact of the alienation with any of the parent, those who ask such silly questions, they understand that how the child will react, what will be the behavior of child of such questions. They understand the need of parenting. Actually, when I talk about the parenting, India do not care about the parenting. They just talk about the guardianship, custody, etc. But actually, when we talk about the parenting is not guardianship. It is not custody. If we say that custody is the negative notation, so we have to work on various aspects of this area so that we can cover up the parental alienation. Parental alienation is coming when only we talk about the sole custody, the single parenting. India is promoting single parenting. They do not see the responsibility of both the parents. They don't see the joint responsibility aspects. They don't see the joint parenting aspects, but they see that sole custody to one parent. And since 80s, it has been observed that most of the custody going to the mother, and it is rarest to the father. So most of the child is being alienated from their parents, and the alienated father, the non-custodial parent. When I talk about the custodial and non-custodial is one who has got the custody right or the guardianship right of the child, who has the sole custody of the child, and the non-custodial parent who just have the visitation right. And that visitation right is again for an hour in a month, or maybe in a year, 1 hour in a year, and so it is not yet defined. There is no set formula for this visitation and all that. So now coming back to the emotional bonding and all that, how this is needed for children development, and this visitation which is happening in a month or in a year, how this is impacting the child life. So if I talk about one scenario again, coming to one scenario, that whenever a child act, have you ever seen that they are responsible for their act? What they are doing is based on their learning. What they are doing is based on either learning or it is on influence. Sometimes it is influence also. If I talk about a simple cross-questional example, it is again complex example I'm taking here. That when a child when some unknown person gives any gift like ice cream or toffee to the child, what they do? They see their parents first and they reject that offer. So this is again a scenario. Why I've said it a complex scenario? That because child is denying based on this learning. They're learning that this might be harmful for me, but second thought is coming that that child needed that ice cream or toffee. That is why they are looking after their parents. So their acts are based on what they have given learning, or sometimes they are influentially doing this thing. So now coming back to the question, whom do you love more, whom do you want to spend time and all that, child generally react in favor of the custodial parent, just to avoid the further complicacy and circumstances. They just want to make happy to the custodial parent. But whatever they are telling, it is from their outer surface. From the inner surface, they are still fighting. They are emotionally getting abused in this area. He has asked to avoid the other parent. Their mind has been poisoned by the custodial parent, who is generally the mother. Who poisoning, your father was harming me, your father was harassing me, he was abusing me and all that. But here I just want to tell you that a child has their own thought, who loves, means it is their feeling, it is not thought, it is their feeling that who loves them, who don't love them, and they know who is loving them. And if somebody is, even there is their parent, and they are forcing them to avoid other parent, it is harming them internally. So this is the first time I can say that they are facing, or they are hurted emotionally. They are hurted emotionally very first time when their parent deny or try to avoid the other parent. So now, on this thing, I have seen a researcher called Jack P, who has written like that. I'm just reading that thing. From the tiniest cell to the capacity for intimate relationship are constructed during their childhood. So this means to say that their growth, their development, either it is emotional or whatsoever is development, even the brain cells I talk about, it is being constructed in their childhood. So if I harm their any portion, any portion of the cell at the time of construction, when they are constructing it, when they are growing in this area, it will harm their overall development. It is not just the emotional development. They are emotionally they have been lacking, but they are also lacking in their overall development side. So now it has two aspects. If I talk about the emotional development.
Can you sort of make it more precise presentation, because we might just be running. We have a second round to come back. Please carry on,
Okay,
yeah, please. Carry on.
So it has basically two portions. The first portion is how the child is reacting, and the second aspect is how the child is going to be social. See, the children start forming their bond with the caregiver. It is generally the parents who are the caregiver. So let's say if I give an example, child raise hand. वो करना चाहता है भैया मुझे अपने कंधे पे लो, अपने गोद में लो, अपना कुछ भी करो. And if you deny that time, it will harm them emotionally. So they know where we will get the affection, where they will get the love, where they will get the care. And once they have been emotionally abused, or they denied this care, this affection, they will not become the social person. They will start living lonely life. They will start living, quitting the schools and all that. So this is the aspect we have to look into, this parental alienation also, because emotional abuse is something which is stopping them to grow to their fullest. And if I talk about the overall conclusion of this discussion from my side, that parental alienation is bad, which is harming their inner core, and we must be ensuring that they should be given chance to develop to their fullest, so that they can contribute back to the nation once they will become an adult. Adult means they grow. And I have also some message for the government and the society, that why government is putting this single parenting as a norm, why they are not focusing on the joint parenting and the joint responsibilities, and for the mass and the message to the society is they see that the single parent as a victim. But I just want to say the ultimate sufferer is the child. It's not the single parent.
Thank you, Kumar. Thank you, Kumar Ratan. And yours is not the last word here. You will be coming back again. I will just shuffle my initial plan and would like to bring in Dr. Swati Bajpayee. Dr. Swati Bajpayee, viewers, is a therapist and she is based in Illinois. In the previous discussions, starting with Dr. Kapoor, and running to Arijit and now Kumar Ratan, what we have, generally got from the panelists is the fact that, which is a very important point that Dr. Kapoor raised, in fact, that the parental alienation harms much more. I mean, in terms of its impact on the kid, is more than sexual abuse. And then Arijit came in saying that the legal intervention, which is also required, is lacking, as I understood him rightly, if I had understood him rightly. But more importantly, as Kumar Ratan pointed out, and Dr. Kapoor had also pointed out, he said that parenting is not just custody. He also said, and all three of them previously talked about the psychological harm that the parental alienation leads to. And as he also said, that, it's a broken kid. He is not a wholesome, full human being. If the parental alienation continues, the output is a member of a society who is not wholesome. Your take, Dr. Bajpayee.
Thank you so much, Suparna. Yes, I would say I'm surprised that they encourage single parenting. Ideally, it should be co-parenting, because you can cease to be partners, but you still remain parents of your child. And what you said is also very correct, that actually a child who's supported, who's loved by the parents, both the parents, even if they're not living together, grows up to be a confident adult who can face challenges of life. If they don't have that kind of security, there are doubts in their mind about the basic love that they should be receiving, which is their right, I would say. It causes a lot of confusion as they grow older, and they find it difficult to trust themselves, their environment, their partners. So coming back to this, I would say that this can be termed an abuse, because if one of the parent is telling a child that the other parent does not love them, does not care, or they're talking about themselves, that I'm being abused. Even if it is, they have to sort it out themselves legally. You don't have to bring a child in between. It's a child's right to feel supported and loved and enriched by both the parents. So unless there is actually an evidence of abuse or neglect by the other parent, when one parent brainwashes a child in this manner, they're actually abusing them. The other one is, as Dr. Kapoor mentioned earlier about guilt. Yes, if a child is made to feel guilty about loving a parent, somewhere they start distrusting their own basic emotions. It's a child's right to love both the parents. The child belongs to both the parents, whether the parents remain together as partners or not. And the third is hatred. Hatred is a learned behavior. No child is born learned hating anybody. So if one parent is teaching a child to hate another parent, it's again an abuse. It's almost like something you would say in the category of child abduction, or the child soldiers in the war who learn to identify with their abductor, their abusers, something which we know about Stockholm Syndrome. But again, it's not a very positive psyche to grow up with. You're affecting the delicate psyche of a child. So now coming back to how it impacts the child. A child who grows up to be adult like this would have mental health issues like depression, anxiety.
Just a moment, Swati. I mean, yeah. Many in the audience may not be aware of what had happened in Stockholm and why it is called a Stockholm Syndrome. So would you care to explain that?
Yes. The Stockholm Syndrome is that the abducted person starts identifying, because they have to survive, and humans are social animals. We need to be emotionally connected to somebody to perform, to function, to grow. So a time comes that then even if the person is somebody who has abducted us, and that's what happened in the Stockholm Syndrome, we start liking them, we start somewhere identifying with them, and somewhere we start justifying them. So in this case, and a child is, you can imagine, so tiny, the child's psyche is still forming up. So whatever we are telling, that is getting imprinted. So yes, it impacts the mental health. That is, they get things, anxiety, depression. I meet a lot of my clients who I meet them most of the time as adults. And when we go back and we find how parental alienation has impacted their lives, they get substance abuse issues because mental health and substance abuse typically go hand in hand. They get personality disorder issues, in all probability more so the borderline personality disorder. So it impacts in so many ways. It affects their professional lives. As they get older, they find it difficult to be a team player. They're not able to trust easily. They're not able to perform as a team. So it impacts their professional life. It impacts their personal life with their partners. They're not able to trust. They're not able to be vulnerable. They're not able to confide in them, which are the elements of a good relationship. And as time goes, they would have problems typically even with connecting with their own children because they did not grow up as, you would say, complete children who knew what positive interaction techniques could be or how to connect with the parent. So if they've not learned it themselves, how are they going to do it with their children? So it impacts in so many ways. And the society over time, as it was said earlier, pays for it because when we have broken adults, it is impacting the mental health, it's impacting the medical aspect of it as with physical health problems, and the work performance is not good enough. Again, there's a string of broken relationships, so this vicious circle does not end. My take would be that, yes, it's an abuse. And if anybody has any questions later on, please do ask. And later on, we can talk about a little bit of interventions. What are some of the things that a parent who is being alienated can do to protect themselves? Because even they need to do some self-care, and how do they need to learn to interact with a child who previously has been brainwashed by another parent. There are techniques you need to follow even for that.
Questions have started coming in, but we are also running out of time. We have two more panelists. From my initial plan, I am just deviating. I will bring in Animesh later as the last speaker. But I would like to come to Jackie. Jackie, you practice from Calcutta. Across India, this thing is becoming very common. The intervention from the legal perspective in the issues of parental alienation are more mechanistic than humane. You know, there is a lack of empathy from the judicial system towards our kids' issues, which are very important. They are the future citizens of this world. And at the same time, the government also seems to be lacking in intent in terms of keeping CWC properly staffed, members properly nominated, and juvenile courts. Anyway, we have across India, we have issues with the number of judges. We don't have enough number of judges. But even then, juvenile courts are crying out for proper staffing. How do you look at the situation, Jackie, as a practicing advocate?
See, the first thing is that we need to realize that where this problem is actually arising, right? The alienation part does not start all of a sudden. We need to realize that there's a marriage will take place, and then there's a love between two partners, And out of that love, this child is the result of that love. Now, one fine morning, because of some kind of differences between both the parents, to fight their own ego, they separate themselves and then they fight over the child. Now, generally, what happens? Initially, they go to a lawyer for the custody of the child. Now, we need to understand this. A lawyer, we also have a social responsibility towards the society. Now, when a child, when any parent, when either of the parents, like either the alienating parent or the alienated parent is coming to the lawyer, he is the first person who should sit and talk to them and try to resolve the issue then and there only. Because in India, as of now, we are not adequate enough to tackle this problem. There are laws in US, there are laws in England, there are laws in other countries, but till date in India, we don't have any law as such as far as parental alienation is concerned. Now, when you go to the family court, then we have a process system. When you go to the family court, the judges, they basically follow a pinhole theory. There are set of examples before them. They have gone through a training. There are set of examples before them. They don't look right. They don't look left. They just try to put the thing into the pinhole. There are few factors which they consider and then put the thing into the pinhole, and that is what all they do. Now we need to understand this. It's similar like two blind men fighting for goggles. They go to another blind man. This is the problem the legal system is facing. Now when you see the parents, when they are referred to the department where the social activists and the psychiatrists, these people are there. Now these are the people who has been nominated by the government. Okay. Now, under many circumstances, I have been to family courts in Assam, in Bihar. I have been to Bombay, Delhi, Calcutta. I regularly visit. In most of the places I have seen, these are the people, those who are not qualified as such. Moreover, they are more inclined to the ruling government. And it is because they are the inclination towards the ruling government. They get the appointment, so they are there. And these people know nothing about parent alienation or what the child is going through or what the treatment the child needs. So these are the basic few problems which we.
So what you are basically saying is the fact that the people who are entrusted with the job of mediating in the inter-conflict are the ones who do not even have any idea about the problem that they are trying to mediate. So on that score, Zaki, I will leave you and go back to Animesh. Animesh Goswami prefers to introduce himself as a person who deals in communication, a technology-enabled communication, but his presence here is more as a socially responsible citizen, as he says, and he has his own take on the whole thing, and he has certain passionate feelings about how the underprivileged and underprivileged, not in the conventional sense of the term, but the people, they are the human beings that we are talking about. They are, in a sense, adults as well, and they are the future of this country. And Animesh has a very intense view about that. Over to you, Animesh.
Thank you, Subarno. One of the benefits of talking last is most of the things that had to be said have been said. This is a very fascinating group. I was sitting and hearing, and the level of exposure that you provided to the audience and even me was great. So thank you for that. I would just touch on the things which normally during my research on this topic and the communication tools that I'm in the process of creating. As a society, we are not very friendly with the vulnerable, be it dumb animals or kids. Sorry if I might sound a bit like an anarchist, but we hardly think about kids in anything. So all the guidelines and everything that we share are for adults. So I am not really surprised when we are saying that we promote single custody in this country. See, I would leave parental alienation, the legal definition and the formal definition aside, and just want to approach it from a different angle. See, even in families which are not broken, even happy families, we always see a level of competition that's happening between parents. See, to give you an example, a toddler, how many of us have witnessed that a toddler is constantly asked whom she loves more, father or mother? This little soul is confused from the question and starts growing up thinking that she cannot love both equally. From there, a level of alienation starts, even in homes which are not broken and may also be happy. I'll give you another example. When there is a conflict between parents on what the child should be when the child grows up, the ambition. Probably if it is a girl, the mom wants her to be a model and the father wants her to be a doctor, which itself is wrong, putting that pressure on the child. But when the parents start arguing between each other on what the kid should be, how the kid should be groomed, a lot of times the parent, in order to convince the kid in his or her line of thought, would demean the other parent and say derogatory things about the other parent, saying that he or she knows nothing, I am more qualified, look, I am more successful in life. And child gets confused and the conflict starts in the child's mind as to the fact that one parent is better than the other. So all these things, when it comes to broken homes, these groundwork which have already has been done unknowingly, subconsciously, takes a nasty turn and we try to exploit that. It doesn't always happen when the family is about to break. It starts much ahead. And the last point that I would like to focus out here, I'll keep it short because we are already strained on time, are the role of grandparents when it comes to a marital dispute. See, the grandparents love their own kid. So they always feel that the spouse of the kid is at the wrong. And if grandparents have got custody through the kid, I have seen a lot of instances where the grandparent takes it onto them to create this negative vibe in the child on the other parent. Because there's a lot of negativity put in the child, but for no reason. It's just because they love their kid more and they feel that the kid has got shortchanged in the marriage and the other person is at fault. So they take it out on the other person by eliminating the other person from the child. So these are the few things when we are really talking of parental alienation and the legal part of it. I know it's very difficult to put it in the legal framework. We have not been able to put it in the legal framework when it comes to direct parents, but when it comes to the psychological part of it, and I would love to have Dr. Swati's view on this. A lot of negative vibes are already implanted in the kid about one parent by the other, and it doesn't need a divorce or a separation. So I thought since all of you have talked of the legal and the dictionary definition of parental alienation, I'll just put my 2 cents into the other aspects of it. And that's all that I had to say.
Questions have started coming in. The first question, I presume, should start with Dr. Kapoor because he was the first one to have brought this issue in, and then we'll move on to Dr. Swati Jalan. There was a question which says that you have mentioned broken human beings. Who are the ones and how are they broken? That essentially is the sense of the question that I gathered.
Okay. All right. So let me answer that with an example of one of the patients that I'd seen and who's there. So this girl is a 17-year-old girl, and I saw her for the first time at one of my medical friends. He runs a psychological and psychiatric center, an in-house facility, and this girl was sitting there, completely stuck inside a room and refusing to come out and meet. And she's just 17 years old. And so I got a little intrigued, and I spoke to the psychiatrist there, and I asked this friend of mine, saying, what happened? And her history is that since the age of 14 and now she's 17, she has aborted herself twice, and she has attempted suicide 3 times. This is a real life example that I'm talking about. Let me quote you another example of, and what happens to the child is, because when the child is being taught from childhood, and when we went back and looked at this girl's history, she had been alienated by her mother since the age of 5. The mother had laid false sexual abuse allegations against the father. And by the age of approximately 7 or 8, the father's rights to meet because of the judicial system had been completely taken away, even though he was completely cleared out. Now, what happens is that when the child turned 14 and 15 and started realizing and got guilty about what had happened, she had a pathetic relationship with her mother, because she started hating her mother for saying, why did you make me lie? Why did you take away my father? And at the same time, she hated her father because she thought that her father had abandoned her. Because that's actually not the truth. But in her mind, the father had abandoned her. So she was now looking for what we call, in normal language, we call as saying that I want to look as a bond. Every human being needs a certain bond with people with whom that person can share. That was the problem. Another case, just 6 months back, somebody whom I know very well, his daughter, she was 22 years old. She had been alienated by her mother for about 15 years. She attempted and committed suicide by jumping from the 13th floor.
Dr. Kapoor, have you made your point? We have more questions coming in. So can you please sum up? We'll go over to Shruti for her take on this, and then we'll come back to...
Sure. Yeah. So I'll very quickly just say it in 2 sentences, would be that what happens to the child is, number one, the child is torn apart inside. The impact on the child is torn apart inside, and the bodily stress reactions which are activated cause both physical, huge amount of mental damage, and at the end of the day, the child goes through a whole lifelong of handicap.
Sati, do you have a take on this? Anything to add to this?
I would totally agree with what Dr. Kapoor had to say, that yes, it creates broken human beings, and these are extreme cases that Dr. Kapoor talked about. But even in general day-to-day life, I meet a lot of people who have had string of broken relationships. They're not able to stay with one partner. Over time, if we look at their professional performance too, while in therapy, that they do realize that a lot of things had to do with because they could not trust. They could not be vulnerable. They had not learned to be themselves or trust their emotions. So those are broken adults moving around day-to-day life who, even if we look at it impacting the economy, it has a huge impact. They're going and taking medical help. They're not able to fulfill their role as a professional, and all the damages of personal life also have an impact on economy. So even if we bring to economy.
So there's another question, I think, Swati, it's for you. This question specifically talks about the role of the caregiver, the caregiver and the kid relationship. How does it impact? I mean, on the parental, the relationship with the parents.
Ideally, both the parents should be caregivers. So, as Dr. Kapoor had mentioned, that the child loses trust. So a lot of times when children grow up and they find out that one parent had lied to me about almost everything, can you imagine the trauma of that child? Now they don't know what to trust in life. Their whole world falls apart. So that is, you can imagine the power of caregiving and how they are misusing it. And both the parents, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Panelists, we are running out of time.
Yeah,
One more question, and it's a very important question. How should the judicial system be informed?
The judicial.
Swati, this I think would be from the guys who are working in the field of Kumar Ratan, Zaki, and Arijit, and of course Dr. Kapoor is also there. So can we make it short and precise? We just have about 3 minutes time, and after that I will just have one sentence each from all of you. Yeah, on this question, how should the judicial system be informed? Dr. Kapoor.
Number one, the simple answer is that I have an issue with even what all of us are discussing and looking at it from a mother-father prism. See, look back and start thinking about it, what Learned Counsel Zaki also said, that the parents must sit down. What we have to understand, what Dr. Bajpai said, is that this is a personality disorder issue, and that's the feeling that we need to get into the judicial system. So first step, education. Second step, setting up rebuttable presumption of shared parenting, which means that shared parenting should be the norm. And third step is having psychological counselors. Since lack of time, 3 quick answers that the judicial system must do.
Arijit, your take on this question?
I think most important part is the judiciary has to be sensitized. I'm not sure whether the judges. But
how should they be?
Judiciary has to be sensitized to the Judicial Training Academy. They have judicial academies all over the states, all over the part of the country, where the judges take training, and this training should be, and the sensitization should be done at the time that the judges are, about to take their job, when they pass out of the judicial exams, and also when some judges are, of course, they are nominated. At those point of time, they should be, sensitized about this whole aspect of things.
Okay, all right. Kumar Ratan, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, time to adopt the enduring family system, which Irene theory has argued that parental relationship still exists even after the separation. So we have to adopt this concept.
Zaki?
See, the first thing is that looking after the welfare of the child, as I said, that we don't have any particular law in India, so we need a group of panelists who should visit nations like America and England, where they already have laws in force, and go and learn from them and train themselves, and come back and train the judges on the same thing.
Okay.
Right? Because there was a question which came up regarding the pinhole theory, which I said. So I think the viewer, he misunderstood me. The thing is that every case is unique. Now you cannot put every case into a pinhole theory. I have seen in many circumstances where the judges take things like, what if this thing would have happened to my daughter?
Zaki, I know I've seen that question, but I've deliberately stepped aside from that, mainly because of the fact that we are running out of time. So one sentence from the panelists, all of you, one sentence. The impact of parental alienation and the severe nature of it, your feeling in one sentence, starting with Dr. Kapoor.
9,000 children are done in children trafficking across India. 82,000 every year go through parental alienation. That is 10 times more. We have a Nobel Prize winner. The whole government machinery and media is working on child trafficking. 10 times more number, and nobody has a clue. We need to set our priorities right.
Thank you, Dr. Kapoor. Arijit?
Basically, we need to enforce the Juvenile Justice Act, amend Section 75, and make parental alienation an abuse and a crime.
Kumar?
See, fight without cause is become norm in the custody battle. So there is a need of a strong law and which with the intervention of the district level of authorities such as CWC and other JJ. So without their involvement, this is not going to achieve.
Zaki?
I'll just say one thing to both the parents. This is my message to both the parents, that both of you love your child a lot, far much more than any judicial system, any psychiatrist, any doctors. You both love your child more than anyone. So keep your personal egos aside, love your child, see that your child does not face through any kind of mental trauma or any kind of psychological problem.
Swati?
Yes, I would also say that parental alienation is a form of abuse. It creates trauma and PTSD symptoms in the child, which stay there for a very, very long time. And yes, both the parents, if you have issues, please seek counseling. Even if you're going to divorce it and you cease to be partners, remain parents for your child. That's the best gift that you can give to a child, support and love. Thank you.
So we are coming to an end. From my
I was left out. I didn't get my share of.
Anyway, sorry. I was on the different screen. I missed you out. You were last. Yes, your last word.
So only for that, I'll take 2 sentences.
Oh God, yeah. All right.
So my message is for the parents directly, that if it becomes absolutely necessary to fight, you fight your own battles. Do not make your child a pawn to exploit. Let her enjoy the company of both parents and learn from both. Let her enjoy life.
Okay, as a moderator, I am supposed to have the last word, but having been a journalist, I will take a quote from Kumar Ratan. I love this. Parenting is not custody keeping. Thank you very much, panelists. It was a very engaging event for me. I learned a lot. I presume that the viewers also have a lot to take home from this. Thank you very much, everybody.